That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, let's go through. Let's talk about some of these week 7 matchups. And yes, obviously the storyline is the bye weeks, the bye weeks, the bye weeks. Everybody's dealing with it. Everybody knows about it. So we're going to be kind of lowering the bar a little bit here when we're discussing every single matchup to try to identify players that we want in our starting lineup, knowing that your options this week, they're not going to be nearly as impactful as they usually are. But of course, before we dive into the actual players, we have to give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats. Our first hat we are going to be giving away is going to go to Adrian. It says, your rankings are going to win me this crazy week. Thanks. Now, thank you so much for supporting the channel. And then our next comment coming out from Dylan Patel. Hell yeah, someone that's always out in the live stream, someone that's been here for a very long time, says, need that hat, my man, need to represent in South Carolina. I'm happy to get you that hat. Please make sure you go through and send me that email ASAP with your address so I can get that sent out to you. And another note is make sure y'all are going and using promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. When you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy and make a $10 deposit, you support this channel more than you would ever believe. You get a max deposit bonus, and they have some really cool player props on there that we've been discussing at length during our live streams. I've been going through making my own bets, and we've been showing you those on the Flock Sports Betting channel. And you get a max deposit bonus when you use promo code FLOCK, make that $10 deposit. And like I said, there's no better way for you to support this channel. Thomas, can you please throw up some of those player props as we go through and talk about these matchups so people can kind of get a sense of what they're going to be looking at? You can also get into some more fantasy football drafts over there on Underdog Fantasy as well, even halfway through the season. And that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into what we have, and let's start this first one off. I guess we don't even need to talk about Denver and Cleveland anymore, because by the time this video is out, that game will already be played. I'll just go through and put a little disclaimer out. Starkville and Sutton, nobody else. Hopefully that call looks great tomorrow. But anyway, let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tennessee Titans. Okay, with Kansas City, very easy. I mean, you're starting Tyra Kill. Tyra Kill did not practice today, but honestly, I mean, it doesn't even matter. Tyra Kill really didn't practice at all last week, and he still came out, and he still had pretty much every single snap played for the Kansas City Chiefs. He dropped over 20 fantasy points. He had 12 targets. He had 9 receptions, 76 receiving yards, a receiving touchdown to go along with it. I mean, Tyreek Hill doesn't need to be at practice. This is a wide receiver that's been with Patrick Mahomes for a very long time. It's very smart for this team to be precautionary and just make sure that Tyreek Hill is getting as many rest days as possible, knowing that this is going to be an extra long season, knowing that they really can't afford Tyreek Hill to be missing any games with their current record. So yeah, Tyreek Hill, you're playing him. You don't need me to tell you that. Now on the other side of the coin with the Tennessee Titans, as of now, it looks like Julio Jones still listed as questionable. I mean, still listed as day-to-day. Now, he has not been practicing at all. I will say this is a fantastic matchup for the Tennessee Titans passing offense. I've been telling a lot of people that if Julio Jones is playing, you are 100% streaming Ryan Tannehill everywhere you can. With the Chiefs, we know that if you ignore this past week against the Washington football team, this is a defense that's allowing about 35 points per game to opposing offenses. And to go along with it, with the Kansas City Chiefs, we know that opposing offenses, they're going to have to really drive their entire offense through the passing game, knowing that Kansas City will put up points at will. Now, of course, with Tennessee, it's a little bit of a different situation when you have Derrick Henry as that bell cow level running back. When you have Derrick Henry as that bell cow level running back, you don't necessarily need to drive everything through the passing game to catch up. We remember that week 2 performance where the Seattle Seahawks got up big against the Tennessee Titans, and they go, you know what? We're not falling into this trap again. We're just going to run the ball. With that being said, not going to be the best matchup for them to go through with that game plan. I think that you have to start 100%. You're starting A.J. Brown as a top 10 wide receiver this week. This was someone that we were talking about being a great buy low candidate going into that Buffalo Bills matchup. He came out yet again, like he's done every single week. He's been fully healthy this season, and he's led this Tennessee Titans offense in targets. I mean, he was pretty damn impressive in what was a high-scoring contest, and a contest that you actually had Derrick Henry dropping 1 million fantasy points in at the same time. A.J. Brown still managed to come score 16 points, which wasn't the best, but if you're looking at the volume, he had 9 targets, 91 receiving yards, and 7 receptions. You know that touchdowns are going to be coming with that type of volume for A.J. Brown in the future based on his historical efficiency marks. So yeah, I think we're going to 100% be jamming in A.J. Brown. Now, in the case of Julio Jones, if he were to play, I'd be very excited about the matchup, but still we have to be hesitant just with a hamstring injury. That's going to be something we're having to continue to monitor the situation. We'll be live streaming every single day as always. Just make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll be talking about that more on Saturday and Sunday. Now let's go over to our next game, which will be the Washington football team and the Green Bay Packers. And I know a lot of people here have been asking us in the live streams, Mason, should we panic? Should we panic on our guy, Terry McLaurin? And you know that Terry McLaurin was a wide receiver I was telling everybody not to draft this upcoming season, saying he was a fantastic talent, but the situation was really bad in Washington. We had wanted nothing to do with him. Now, that being said, I don't want to come out here and act like I was some type of genius, because if anything, it's the exact opposite. If anything, I was an idiot, because while I was telling people to avoid Terry McLaurin, instead, I was telling people to draft Allen Robinson over him. And obviously that call looks horrendous. And I will say, with Terry McLaurin, I know a lot of people are worried. There's no reason to be worried. I mean, if you're going to be pulling up the volume that you've had from Terry McLaurin in Washington over the past 3 weeks, this is a wide receiver that has been getting everything in this offense with no Curtis Samuel, with no Logan Thomas. Yes, Ricky Seals-Jones has been pretty damn good, but you've still had over 10 targets a game for Terry McLaurin. Now, against the Saints, against the Chiefs, he was disappointing, but keep in mind that last game against the Kansas City Chiefs, he almost didn't even play in. I still have Terry McLaurin ranked as a wide receiver 1 in our rest of season rankings over there on Patreon. Of course, you can find that in the description of the video. And I'm going to have Terry McLaurin ranked as a wide receiver 1 this week. He has that role. They are going to have to be throwing the ball against the Green Bay Packers. We know with the Green Bay Packers, this is a defense that usually is pretty damn good. No Jair Alexander. I believe that you will have Washington behind in this game a significant portion of time. They're going to be forced to throw the ball that's going to be going in the direction of Terry McLaurin. Start Terry McLaurin. You can also start Ricky Seals-Jones if you are desperate at tight end. Say you have someone like Dalton Schultz, Dawson Knox in the bye, go pick up Ricky Seals-Jones. You can start him as well. And in the case of the Green Bay Packers, I mean, you kind of know where we're at. You start Devontae Adams, you start nobody else. I mean, that's something that we should have known coming into the year. Y'all know Robert Tanyan was one of our must-avoid players in drafts based on all his value last year being driven off his touchdown rate, which is not sustainable season to season. Yeah, you're seeing that if you're not getting the volume, it's not going to maintain over the long haul. So yeah, Robert Tanyan, at this point, you can just go through and cut him. Don't even have to consider starting him. Now, with the Cincinnati Bengals, Baltimore Ravens in our next matchup, really want to make sure that we're monitoring the health of what you have with a couple key members in this matchup. Now, I will say with Baltimore, this is a defense that's very hard to know exactly what we should be expecting, just because, I mean, this has been a team that comes out, they shut down, the Los Angeles Chargers to get 6 points in that past week's performance. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams do absolutely nothing. Austin Eckler fails us miserably after we ranked him at an embarrassingly high mark in our week 6 running back rankings. Now, with that being said, you're going to be still starting Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase has been fantastic, and because it's the bye week apocalypse, I think that we're actually going to be starting T. Higgins as well. I'm going to be ranking T. Higgins as a top 24 wide receiver. I know Higgins has been disappointing over the past few weeks because he really hasn't found his way into the end zone. But keep in mind, this is a 6'4", 210-pound wide receiver. I would assume that if anybody's going to have a touchdown rate higher than expectation, higher than the league average, it will be someone like T. Higgins. The volume is there. The volume is right next to what you actually have with Jamar Chase. He tied Jamar Chase for targets in this offense this past week. You bench Tyler Boyd, you start T. Higgins, and you start Jamar Chase. Now, going back to the injury that we have to monitor, I really want to see what we're going to have from Sammy Watkins. You are going to be starting Hollywood Brown regardless. Now, keep in mind, this has been a wide receiver we've been saying to sell high based on the just way unsustainable rate this Baltimore Ravens passing offense is going. Of course, you're not expecting this volume to be there throughout the entire year, but with Hollywood Brown, he's been fantastic. You are going to be starting him if you have him. Now, with Rashad Bateman, however, I think Bateman is a wide receiver that if you're looking at the snaps played last week, he didn't play every single snap. It didn't really matter. He was very impressive on a per snap basis. He had 6 targets in this offense coming into the Los Angeles Chargers matchup. That's not something you would have expected if I told you that he didn't play every snap. Now, I'll say against the Bengals, it will be a better matchup here where you're not expecting Latavius Murray, Devonta Freeman, Le'Veon Bell all to get a rushing touchdown. There should be more touchdown volume to go to the wide receivers in this offense, with a lot of teams being desperate for a wide receiver when they have guys like CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen all on bye. I think if Sammy Watkins does not play this week, which Sammy Watkins did not practice on Wednesday, will be something we have to continue to monitor. Rashad Bateman could be an intriguing deep play, and for whatever reason Rashad Bateman is on your waiver wire, go pick him up ASAP. Now let's go to our next game, which will be the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants. And as of practice reports on Thursday, looks like you will not have Kadarius Toney or Kenny Golladay playing for the New York Giants here. So, I mean, we ranked Sterling Shepard as a top 24 wide receiver in our rankings, but we kind of put him at a conservative mark going, okay, well, maybe you get one of Golladay or Kadarius Toney, but if neither wide receiver play, then you're 100% moving Sterling Shepard up your rankings, and that's what we're doing here. He had 14 targets last week. Now, yes, it's an offense that you should expect to be very disappointing with just a lack of weapons overall, but still, you know that Sterling Shepard will have that target volume. I think this will be a closer contest between the Giants and the Panthers than it was the Giants and the Los Angeles Rams. Now, in the case of the Carolina Panthers, you start DJ Moore. I know a lot of people have been asking about Robbie Anderson as of late. Now, I don't know if it's because the Terrace Marshall concussion. I don't know if there was another podcast coming out saying something positive about what you actually had with Robbie Anderson. I don't know. But if you're looking at Robbie Anderson so far this year, it is laughable. And I repeat, laughable with the production that we have. If you're looking at a points per game basis, Robbie Anderson is someone that is currently averaging less points per game than Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, with Robbie Anderson, the volume's been there. Now, y'all know I always say to chase the volume, chase the volume, chase the volume, fade the efficiency. But with that being said, Robbie Anderson has been one of the worst wide receivers in the entire NFL with his catch rate. I mean, right now he's had 15 receptions off of 40 targets. He's been one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL with his yards per target. He's had 190 receiving yards with 40 targets. That is laughably bad. I mean, he literally is averaging less points per game than Donovan Peoples-Jones. Donovan Peoples-Jones compared to Robbie Anderson's 40 targets so far this season. They played the same amount of games as well. Donovan Peoples-Jones has had 15 targets. He has had essentially a third of the amount of targets, and he has still come away with more fantasy points. Now, I will say, yeah, if I'm ranking these guys rest of season, we go Robbie Anderson, but that's not necessarily the point here. The point is, Robbie Anderson's someone you're not considering starting at all. I mean, I think at this point, you're not cutting him, but he's getting damn close. You can't start anybody outside of DJ Moore for Carolina. Now, our next matchup for the wide receivers will be the Atlanta Falcons, Miami Dolphins. I mean, Calvin Ridley, top 5 wide receiver rest of season. Go check out our rest of season rankings on Patreon. You will see exactly how aggressive we are with Calvin Ridley. Have him ranked ahead of players like DeAndre Hopkins, someone getting 11 targets a game. We're 100% chasing that in a plus matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Other wide receivers for Atlanta, we're not going to go over to a wide receiver, but we will go over to Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is a must-start option. Now, you all know with Kyle Pitts, we called him a buy low candidate a few weeks back after people were very disappointed with what you had through the first month of the season. But as soon as Kyle Pitts has that blow-up game, I mean, in a contest where it wasn't necessarily in a hard matchup for Kyle Pitts, I mean, he came out, he dropped almost 30 points in a tight end premium format against the New York Jets with no Calvin Ridley here. So, of course, the offense was going to run through him. I'm not going to be having that usual expectation for him to come away with 9 receptions, 190 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. If other people in your league do have that expectation, I probably would go through and I would sell Kyle Pitts, try to sell him in a wide receiver to get to Travis Kelce. But still, I mean, you're starting him. Of course you're starting him. You don't need me to tell you that. Now with Miami, looks like Devante Parker may play this week. I mean, he did practice on Wednesday. Let me see if we have any up-to-date reports on him for Thursday. Of course, this will be out there by the time this video is out. But no, as of now, at the time of this recording, really we're just waiting on Devante Parker to possibly play in full on Thursday at practice. And that would indicate that he would be on the game on Sunday. And I think given the great matchup you have against the Atlanta Falcons, you could possibly get away with starting Jalen Waddle, Devante Parker, and Mike Gesicki, knowing that Will Fuller's not here. Now, I'm not going to be that excited about Devante Parker. I'll be excited to play Jalen Waddle. I'll be excited to play Mike Gesicki. With Devante Parker, hard to know if he's going to come back into that exact same role that he would have without the injury. So I think that we have to be a little hesitant here, but still most likely going to go through and see some rosters y'all are sending me in the live stream, and y'all are so desperate. You might most likely may have to play Devante Parker with the injuries and with the bye weeks that everybody is dealing with. Now, our next matchup, the New York Jets and the New England Patriots. I do not want to start anybody for New York. I don't want to start Michael Carter. I know this isn't a running back video, but I don't want to be starting Corey Davis. I mean, if you're looking at Corey Davis so far this season, yeah, I mean, Corey Davis hasn't had that bad of a year by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, Corey Davis has been impressive given the offensive context that he is in. Corey Davis, a very good wide receiver. The problem is just the offense he's playing in. I mean, right now he's the wide receiver 31 on a points per game basis. If we're going back to what we had with Corey Davis against the New England Patriots in week 2. Keep in mind, Zach Wilson had 4 interceptions. 4 interceptions is not going to really allow anything to happen in this offense, but you did get 2.8 fantasy points. You had 5 targets, 2 receptions, and 8 receiving yards for Davis. He'll be better than that this week, but still, I don't think we can be starting him. We can't be starting Crowder. We can be starting Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers, still a player that I want to stand by as possibly one of the most intriguing buy lows at the wide receiver position. I mean, he really is going to cost you nothing right now. He's wide receiver 42 on a points per game basis. He's a wide receiver 4, and nobody's really looking at him as an extremely exciting option to put in your starting lineup. But this is someone that's had 52 targets through 6 weeks so far. The efficiency isn't that bad from a yards per target or from a catch rate perspective. It's not great. But what you really want to see is the fact that he's had 52 targets and no touchdowns so far. We know that is 100% something that the touchdown rate for these wide receivers goes up and down, up and down, up and down. I actually think that you can be expecting better days on the horizon for someone like Jacoby Myers. I think we are probably going to be playing him this week, even though he's been a wide receiver 4 so far this year. Hunter Henry, you can also play. Hunter Henry clearly looks like the tight end 1 in New England. Outside of that, not really wanting to play anybody else in this receiver core. Now, our next matchup will be the Philadelphia Eagles and the Las Vegas Raiders. And oh my gosh, we're coming off a week where I predicted Devonta Smith to be a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. And obviously that was an atrocious call. There is nothing that I can do to hide from that call. But I mean, I was looking at it against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going, okay, well, I mean, so far we've seen opposing offenses this year have to throw the ball 40 plus times every single game against the Buccaneers. Devonta Smith will be going up against the banged up secondary. Wanted to get excited. Clearly did not work out. Now, with all that being said, if we're going to be looking at Devonta Smith for this week in particular, I still think with all the bye weeks, we're going to have him ranked as a low-end wide receiver 2. I think that he will be a player that you have to go through and plug and play. Even though he's been very up and down, you have seen the ceiling. And with Zach Ertz leaving the offense, there's going to be more targets to go around. Also, want to be playing Dallas Goddard with Dallas Goddard here. Like I said, no Zach Ertz. I think Dallas Goddard is a clear play from now on. Now, in the case of the Las Vegas Raiders, I know you just had a very down week from Darren Waller. Don't worry about it. You play Darren Waller. I mean, Darren Waller is that elite level tight end option still. And in the case of the other wide receivers in this offense, you could go with Henry Ruggs. One thing that's really intriguing is if you're looking at the implied team total for this Las Vegas Raiders matchup, you actually have Las Vegas saying that they're going to be like the 8th best offense this week. Now, keep in mind, a lot of that's going to go through the rushing game, but still, I think with Las Vegas, there is an argument to be made to play Henry Ruggs in a week that he could just come out, win you your matchup outright, when a lot of your opponents are going to be crippled with what they actually have from the injuries or the buys that they have for their own wide receiver core. Now, our next game, the Detroit Lions and the Los Angeles Rams. You start Cooper Kupp. Don't need me to tell you that. I mean, with the Lions, you're not starting anybody outside of TJ Hawkinson. I mean, with TJ Hawkinson, you did get the bump up this past week with his own usage in Detroit. This is something we were talking about, buying low on Hawkinson, knowing that this was a tight end that was dealing with a multitude of injuries. This past week, he comes out, gets 11 targets against the Bengals, 8 receptions, 74 receiving yards. Hawkinson is an elite level option against the Rams. Outside of that, I mean, you're not starting any other wide receiver here or tight end. And then if we're going to be looking at what we will get from the other side of the coin with the Los Angeles Rams, really the only question is, do we start Tyler Higby? Do we start Robert Woods? Robert Woods was fine from a fantasy football standpoint last week, but it was mainly just based off the fact that he did find his way into the end zone. Now with Tyler Higby here, this has been an option that's been pretty consistent over the past 3 weeks. I mean, he's had in a tight end premium format, 17 points, 10 points, 10 points, 11 points. But I mean, he has had 25 targets this season so far. Over the past 5 weeks, he's actually only had 18 targets. He's had 2 touchdowns off those targets. Not going to be expecting that rate to continue going into the future. So you may not be in a position where you can get away from starting someone like Tyler Higby this week, knowing that, keep in mind, I mean, you have guys like Dalton Schultz, Dawson Knox, even more names that I'm not remembering right now, currently on bye, so you maybe have to start Higby, but I would be looking for a better option. Similar thing with Robert Woods. I think that we actually had someone coming out and giving us the note from our last wide receiver ranking video that it was laughable how high we had Robert Woods. We had Robert Woods over someone like, I hate to admit it, but Brandon Cooks, and I agree with you. I think that was a really bad ranking. I think that we should have done better, and I think that you cannot go through and start him in that range. I think with Robert Woods, he will be a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2, but it's hard to rank him as much more than that with confidence. Now, our next matchup with the Chicago Bears versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Great matchup for Allen Robinson, great matchup for Darnell Mooney. Still looking for better options with how limited this overall offense is with the amount of plays that they're running per game, especially the amount of passing plays that they have per game in Chicago. They're really trying to slow these games down the best they can. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right now, Antonio Brown did not practice on Thursday with that ankle injury. I think Antonio Brown is like a legitimate questionable. It's not just a questionable like Tyra Kill. Oh, he's not practicing, but he's going to play. No, with Antonio Brown, a wide receiver that we are going to have to monitor. I think that you have to play every single wide receiver in Tampa, though. You're playing AB, you're playing Godwin, you're playing Evans, just knowing that the passing volume is going to be there. Now, yes, there's a ton of competition for targets in that offense, so you're most likely just going to be dealing with some spike weeks here to here, and the floor is going to be very low. We've seen that with someone like Mike Evans so far this season. But still, with that being said, I mean, you are going to be looking at these wide receivers and just saying the ceiling's so high any given week, they have to be players in your starting lineup. Okay, so now our next matchup will be the Houston Texans and the Arizona Cardinals. You have to start Brandon Cooks. Hopefully, I know a lot of people are speculating that Tua Tagovailoa is going over to the Washington football team. You have Deshaun Watson going over to Miami. You get Houston with some picks. Hopefully, there's that outside chance that Tua actually makes his way to Houston, because if that was going to be the case, I mean, you would get very, very excited with what you would have from Brandon Cooks going forward. This is someone getting every single target in Houston, every single target, even though, I mean, the offense is so damn bad. It's hard to get excited. I mean, if they got that upgrade at quarterback, it'd be fantastic. You're still starting Brandon Cooks because he's getting 40% of his team's targets. Now, the Arizona Cardinals, you start DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, with DeAndre Hopkins, I think there's an intriguing case to be sold that he is a sell if you can go get Calvin Ridley for him based on the unsustainable touchdown rate that he has had this year. But, I mean, they are adding in Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, not affecting too much for me here. We're not really playing Zach Ertz this week. I think with the secondary wide receivers, I mean, obviously, they just come out. They keep crushing every single week. I mean, a week ago, you have A.J. Green coming in with his usual 6 targets in a game, and A.J. Green coming away with the touchdown. Let me pull up the exact stat line that we had for A.J. Green. He was the wide receiver 35 so far this year. Comes in with his usual 6 targets, 5 receptions, 79 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown at the same time. I know that they did that in a contest that just got blown out of the water, but still, I think it's so hard to get that excited about what you may have with really anybody here as the secondary wide receivers, just because the passing volume is going to be so down for this offense. You may end up having to do it, but I wouldn't love to start A.J. Green, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore also saw a career high in snaps a week ago, which is definitely something that is important to note. Now, our next matchup will be the Indianapolis Colts and the 49ers. I think Michael Pittman, probably a guy that you're starting. I mean, right now it looks like T.Y. Hilton could miss this game. Looks like Hilton, I mean, did get 4 targets this past week, was very effective with those 4 targets against the Houston Texans. I think you probably start Michael Pittman regardless. And in the case of the 49ers, you start Deebo Samuel. You're not starting anybody else. I mean, obviously, Brandon Ayuk has been one of the major disappointing wide receivers so far this season. I think this is a matchup that's going to be a little lower scoring than most people want to assume with no George Kittle. Also, with the fact that this 49ers defense is fantastic, I think we are going to be starting Pittman and Deebo, and probably that's about it. Now, our last game, we have the Seattle Seahawks and the New Orleans Saints, and we're still getting so much hate for me ranking Deacon Metcalf as a low-end wide receiver 2 with Geno Smith here, despite us seeing that Geno Smith is going to be horrendous. We have already discussed this. I mean, we saw it last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I want to be avoiding as many players as we can here. Remember how much everybody hated me whenever we came out and we talked about Tyler Lockett being someone that you couldn't start against Pittsburgh. But here we are. This offense is really bad. I want nothing to do with it. You're starting Deacon Metcalf because he's Deacon Metcalf, even though you're not excited about it. And then in the case of the New Orleans Saints, I mean, with the Saints, let me pull up the most recent report that we have with Michael Thomas here, because obviously if Michael Thomas were to play, I mean, you're most likely going to go through and play Michael Thomas just as a wide receiver that definitely has that low-end wide receiver 1 appeal. So the most recent report was coming out October 18th. Sounds like he is 100% not going to be playing this week. So with Michael Thomas, not going to even be considering him. And in the case of Callaway, this is a wide receiver that did have a very impressive performance right before the Saints bye week, but it was mainly fueled off of just what he had with touchdowns. The volume, the role wasn't necessarily there in the offense. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns on 4 receptions for 85 receiving yards. Probably just going to be benching every single wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. Make a $10 deposit. Check out some player props. Go through, get in a fantasy draft, support this channel. And also, go check out Patreon. Get our rest of season rankings. Get a I don't even know what else you get. Get in a fantasy football league. Get me to make a podcast about your fantasy team. Get in our group chat. You get so much with those rest of season rankings over there on Patreon. And yeah, I think that's all I got for y'all. And I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this video.